With the release of Forgotten Realms Heroes of Faerun, we also got 8 new subclasses of varying quality. Today, I wanted to take a look at the new Scion of the 3 Rogue, because I think a lot of what it's going for is incredibly cool, but its execution leaves a little bit to be desired. As we always do for our new subclasses, we're going to begin by reading the description so everyone is on the same page about the vibe of the class and what it's trying to accomplish. Become a gruesome agent of malice. A Scion of the 3 draws power from a group of malevolent gods known in Baldur's Gate as the Dead Three. Bane, a god of tyranny, Baal, a god of violence, and Myrkul, a god of death. While some rogues of this subclass pledge themselves ardently to those 3 macabre gods, others are thrust onto this path by a curse. Either way, a Scion's power manifests as various occult gifts, as well as an uncanny talent for striking and terrifying foes. Scions of the 3 are most common in Baldur's Gate, where the Dead Three lived as mortals before ascending to godhood. Underground cults to Bane, Baal, and Myrkul often count Scions of the 3 among their most useful agents. Outside of Baldur's Gate, secular thieves guilds such as the Shadow Thieves of Am or the Xanathar's Guild in Waterdeep might call on a Scion of the 3 to undertake an especially violent contract. Strictly based on the description, I'd be lying if I said that this was not sounding cool as hell, because it is. Here's the thing though, I am extremely confident that the biggest reason that we're seeing this subclass being printed now is to capitalize on more recognition from Baldur's Gate 3. The Dead Three were a major part of the game, and this is another obvious tie to that. The reason I bring it up is because just based on the description, it's hard to see how a Scion of the 3 would naturally fit in with most heroic adventuring parties, as a large part of their core is like actively evil. Now yes, if you do read through the description of worshippers of the Dead Three, it does not always require you to be purely evil. Even in regard to Baal, the god of murder and violence, they explain how sometimes people will pray to him and kill in his name because they've been done dirty by any other legitimate attempts. And of course, the description itself does also bring forth the possibility of someone being thrust into this line due to a curse, which could be its own very flavorful story arc to kind of work through and figure out. In any case, I don't believe in shutting down evil character concepts, provided it is not an active detriment to the party. I believe that there could be legitimate reasons for an evil character to align itself with good or neutral aligned party for the purposes of achieving their own end goals. Now, I do also know that this could be very difficult to accomplish in practice. Regardless, that is a much larger discussion that goes way beyond the scope of this video. Today, we're just going to be discussing the Scion of the 3 subclass, and you can decide for yourself whether it's an appropriate fit for your group. I'm not even saying it's the first subclass to fall into the zone, I'm just merely pointing it out. Really quickly, I'm trying to get as close as I can to hitting 25,000 subscribers before the end of the year, so if you'd like to help me on that quest, subscribing to the channel and clicking the like button while you're there helps so much more than you probably realize. Thank you so much. Our first feature at level 3 is Bloodthirst. This makes it so that whenever an enemy that we can see within 30 feet of ourselves takes damage and is bloodied after taking damage but not killed outright, we can then use our reaction to teleport to an unoccupied space within 5 feet of that enemy and make one melee attack as part of the same reaction. We can use this feature a number of times equal to our intelligence modifier and regain all uses after a long rest. So there's quite a bit to unpack here. Firstly, we see another use of the bloodied condition, which I am so here for. This was a condition that was revived in the 2024 core rulebooks, and I felt was massively underutilized, so it is exciting to see it pop up here. There's been some other places that we've seen it as well come up in the Forgotten Realms books, which is awesome. As a quick reminder for those who might not be aware, Bloodied is a new condition that triggers when something is at half health. It does not do anything in itself other than act as an indicator of just being at half health, but rather it's that other abilities can trigger when a creature becomes bloodied. Back to Bloodthirst though, secondly and definitely the biggest thing, this is a reaction-based proactive attack. That is amazing. So often, reaction-based attacks are something that you can't actively play into because they are reactions. In many cases, your most common way to make it work is by hoping a creature triggers an opportunity attack on you, but now it doesn't require that at all. Yes, it does consume our reaction, which does mean that we can't make opportunity attacks if we've already done this, or if we did make an opportunity attack, we can't do this instead. The other big perk of this is that it enables us to use sneak attack off turn, which is always very powerful. As a reminder, sneak attack is a once per turn ability, not once per round. This does mean that it allows us to use it off turn, even if we've already used it on our turn. This has always been true for opportunity attacks as well, I'm just highlighting the fact that it does work here too. Obviously, we still need to ensure that all criteria for making a sneak attack are still in effect, but provided they are, this can be an incredibly powerful way to make what ultimately amounts to a free attack. It's incredible. Especially when we consider that the bonus effects from cunning or devious strikes can be used too, even off turn. One other note on the trigger for this reaction, it requires the enemy to both take damage and be bloodied. The positive side of this is that it does not require that the damage to be from a melee weapon attack. It could be from a ranged attack, a spell, a trap, literally anything that deals damage does satisfy the first half of the trigger. This is important to note that it wouldn't apply if just a control spell was put on an enemy and they happened to be bloodied, or if the enemy was immune to the damage type that they would have sustained. Both elements of the trigger need to be satisfied for this to work. The final note about this ability is that it can only be used an amount of times equal to our intelligence modifier per long rest, which probably means that we're not able to do this a whole lot. If you're playing a Scion of the 3, I would imagine that you would certainly not be dumping intelligence, but it does stretch the class a bit thin as far as ability scores go. Obviously, they're not the first rogues to have this same dilemma, as arcane tricksters have been making it work for a very long time. It is just something that is worth noting. Likely, for most of your adventuring career, you'll maybe have a +2 or +3 in intelligence, unless you really focused on it and took feats to also help improve it. Overall, Bloodthirst is an incredibly powerful ability that certainly can be a build around for a lot of people. The biggest downside is just the usage limit, but this can largely be overcome depending on how you build your character as well. Next, and also at level 3, we get Dread Allegiance. This allows us once per long rest to choose one of the dead 3, Bane, Baal, and Merkel, and gain a resistance and a cantrip based on what we choose. If we choose Bane, we get a resistance to psychic damage and can cast Minor Illusion. If we choose Baal, we get poison resistance and can cast Blade Ward, and if we choose Miracle, we get necrotic resistance and can cast Chill Touch. As far as the damage resistance is concerned, strictly based on average output damage types in the new monster manual, necrotic is the best pick. However, it is worth mentioning that all 3 of necrotic, poison, and psychic are very tightly packed with not a whole lot separating them from each other. I don't believe that this was an accident either. As far as the cantrips go, Blade Ward and Minor Illusion are far superior to Chill Touch, especially since Chill Touch can't sneak attack. The only quote-unquote problem with Minor Illusion is, as I've discussed in the past, it's an illusion spell, which requires a bit of additional buy-in from a DM, and is almost never universally run the same way at every table. Fortunately though, we are able to swap our choice out with each long rest, so if we know that we're going to be facing monsters that utilize a particular damage type more frequently or want a particular cantrip, we can base our decision on that, which helps a ton and is a big part of what makes this feature surprisingly strong. Next at level 9, we get Strike Fear, which gives us a new option for our Cunning Strike. This gives us Terrify, which for the cost of 1d6 off of our sneak attack damage, we can subject the target to a Wisdom saving throw, failing which they are frightened for 1 minute. While frightened in this way, we have advantage on attack rolls against the target. It does also get a repeated save to end the effect at the end of each of its turns. I think this might be a bit of an unassuming feature, but it is strong and has some pretty simple combos that can work quite well. Firstly, just it being frightened means that all of its attack rolls are going to be made with disadvantage provided that we are within line of sight, which is already pretty good. But on top of that, all of our attacks are going to be made at advantage. This means that if the frightened creature did try to run away and get out of line of sight, even if someone was able to tag the creature with a ranged attack, we could still activate our Bloodthirst reaction and activate our sneak attack without needing to do anything else since we already have advantage on the roll. It's a strong feature. I don't think it's busted or anything, but it certainly is something that could be considered during your build. Now at level 13, this is where things begin to fall off the rails a little bit. Our level 13 feature is Aura of Malevolence. With it, when we use our Bloodthirst and teleport, each creature of our choice within 10 feet so we can protect our allies of either the space where we left or where we land, again we get to choose which one, they take damage equal to our intelligence modifier, and the damage type is the same as the resistance granted from Dread Allegiance. Additionally, damage dealt by this feature ignores resistance. There's a few problems with this feature, the most obvious of which is just the fact that the damage output is extremely low. Remember, we are level 13 when we get this, and it's dealing probably like 3 damage at this point. Yes, it can hit multiple creatures within a 10-foot range, but how many you can hit is going to be extremely dependent on the current game state, and even if you're somehow hitting like 5, congratulations, you dealt like 15 damage at level 13, spread out across 5 creatures. I hope your 50 sessions up to this point were worth it. But seriously though, the second thing is that it's tied to also a use of our Bloodthirst feature, which, as we've already discussed, is fairly limited. This means that if our intelligence modifier was a +3, we could only do this 3 times per long rest. Honestly, even if it was sitting at a +5 and we could do it 5 times per long rest, it's still low. And to make that work, you'd really be sinking a ton of resources into this. Don't get me wrong, it's an incidental, I was going to be doing this thing anyway, and now it's a lot better kind of feature. And I am here for that. I genuinely like that kind of design. I just wish that this one in particular was not so unimpactful. Maybe if it could hit targets both where we landed and where we left from, maybe? Or even the playtest version where it was an actual aura that triggered at the start of our turn. The other thing about this is the last part that says it bypasses resistance. That's super cool, I love it. But there's not a whole lot of resistances to bypass here. As of right now, in all of exclusively 2024 D&D, there are only 10 creatures resistant to poison, 19 resistant to necrotic, and only 8 that are resistant to psychic. Now again, of course, if you know what kind of creatures you're going up against, there is additional value here and some way to sort of game it. But just taking an average, it's not doing a whole lot. Probably the bigger concern though is that it bypasses resistance, not immunity. This is an issue because although there aren't a ton of creatures that are resistant to poison damage, there are in fact a ton, 79 to be precise, that are outright immune to poison. So even if you did know what you were facing, you still have a pretty reasonable chance to just randomly get hit with a poison immune creature, and then you can't do your 3 damage to them. This feature is incredibly underwhelming. I'm not really sure, to be honest, what's even going on here. And finally, we have our level 17 feature, Dread Incarnate. This one gives us 2 bonuses. First is Cutthroat, which allows us to regain 1 use of our Bloodthirst per short rest, and Murderous Intent, which makes it so that when we roll a 1 or 2 for our sneak attack damage, we can treat the roll as a 3. This is a bit of a rough capstone if I'm being totally honest. We waited until level 17 to get a single recovered use of Bloodthirst when we short rest. I'll be clear that this is not bad. It's just more challenging to evaluate since not every group takes short rests at the same cadence. Best case scenario, you're looking at 1 or 2 extra uses per adventuring day, which obviously is not bad. But it should be remembered that it's not like these are on command. You can't just regain one when you want to in the middle of an encounter. You need to short rest. As for Murderous Intent, it's again just a fairly minor buff. Once again, it falls into the category of, well, I'm doing this thing anyway, so it's nice that it's a little bit better. At the point when we get this feature, at level 17, we are rolling 9d6 for our sneak attack. Assuming we're rolling all of them and not sacrificing any for cunning or devious strikes, we have roughly a 60% chance of rolling at least 3 dice that are a 1 or a 2. It drops off pretty aggressively after that. Even assuming all 3 of these rolled a 1, that means that we get to add 6 damage. Hell, even if all 9 rolled a 1, we're only adding 18. That's best case scenario, 18 damage at level 17. These are always the complicated features to evaluate. Fail-safe type features, ones that help make sure something doesn't totally bomb, are kind of tricky. They can be so nice to weave in across an adventuring career to increase the consistency and average output of a character, but design-wise, I just don't like them as capstones. This is what you played a Scion of the 3 Rogue for 17 levels to get, and it's not doing anything that's cool or powerful or flavorful. It's not making you feel excited. It's just making sneak attack marginally better. Is that bad? No. Is that exciting? Also no. So that's the Scion of the 3 Rogue. Overall, I think the subclass has a really cool idea that it was trying to roll with, but I think the execution just fell a little bit flat, especially toward the end of the subclass. It was so close to being really good, but I believe that they just pulled it back a little bit too much, even from the UA version, which a lot of people felt was a bit on the weak side anyway. I guarantee there's going to be some super spicy ways to optimize this, so I'll let people who are way better at that than me take it on. With that, check out some of my other videos, but otherwise, take care.